Hey, good morning, Triunium friends. I'm Pastor Sue, and welcome to this week's episode of Patio Ponderings. Today, I have chosen a very unusual patio. I am in the storage room of the church. The church, like so many of us, have a lot of extra stuff hanging around that maybe we'll need someday, maybe we won't, maybe it needs fixing, maybe we just need to take time to sort through it and figure out what we want and what we don't want. And this is just endemic into our culture, right? Our culture puts a lot of emphasis on having stuff. And we need places to put stuff. And so our culture has a storage industry that generates $40 billion of revenue every year. And so this is the trend that I've been thinking about, the cultural practices that we have around stuff. As we have finished up our series on the 10 Commandments, and in particular this last week, we've been talking about the do not covet commandments. And this is what we hear out of Exodus chapter 20. Do not desire and try to take your neighbor's house. Do not desire and try to take your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox, donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. Do not desire your neighbor's anything. And yet, like I said, we have a lot of emphasis on our culture, industries and advertising and marketing that spend a lot of time and effort and money getting us to desire what our neighbor has. We got to keep up with the Joneses, and whoever dies with the most toys wins. But I've also been thinking about another trend that is emerging in our culture, and it's coming out of our young adult demographic, those we might consider Gen Zers or our younger millennials. And that is a cultural trend toward minimalism, a trend towards choosing experiences over things, of not wanting to be burned down by having a lot of stuff. It's a trend of tiny houses and not creating waste, and upcycling and recycling and DIYing. So it's working against some of these other cultural trends. And so as we think about living out our faith, as we think about how we live into these commandments and living well with God and each other in not desiring our neighbor's stuff or relationships, I think this highlights a really important call that we have as the people of God. And that call is to consider the world, the actual real world that we live in, to consider its practices, the cultural trends within it, our practices. And these practices, none of them come out of a faith tradition or a religious belief, for the most part. And yet we're called to consider them and discern which of the practices, what are the trends that work counter to our faith, and which are the ones that we can live into alongside our culture of faith. I think this trend toward minimalism and maybe putting a lot less emphasis on our stuff and more on relationships and experiences, that's pretty compatible with our Christian faith. That's maybe something we could live into a little bit more. What do you think? What do you think about how we assess the ways of living within our culture and how they fit within our faith? How do you think about the role of stuff and acquiring whatever it might be, things and material goods and even relationships and things like that? How do you match those things up with what you believe? Would love to hear what you have to say. As always, and in the meantime, stay warm. Cold weather's coming. We'll see you in church on Sunday. Bye.